Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Jurassic Dictionary. A lot of you know me as Karen Ann Harlos, the Pink Flame of Liberty. I normally do a libertarian political show. This obviously isn't that, though I'm sure politics will start to come into play into some of this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer episode than normal. These are going to be short, but I wanted to give you some of my inspiration, at least for this episode. And I apologize for any number of jump cuts. I'm normally a live streamer. You would think pre-recorded shows would be easier for a live streamer, but it really isn't. You second guess everything. But the inspiration, at least for this show, and will be for many more, is this wonderful book by, I'm going to mangle the name, Jeffrey Kasserk, which is The Word Museum. I didn't get past the intro before I got my subject for today. So what is the word from the Jurassic Dictionary we are going to be going over today? Well, it comes in two forms, knocker-upper or up-knocker. The minute I saw that, I was like, I have to cover that. But before we get into that, and yes, I actually have notes like a professional. My goal is to do a show about one a week, and I might release them ahead of time to my Pink Flame of Liberty Patreon subscribers. Please check out that channel if you're interested in politics at all. That is Pink Flame of Liberty, obviously. On YouTube, it's also on TikTok. So my goal is to talk about dead or dying words, sometimes with a goal maybe to revive them, at least in my personal language, or at least to give us a glimpse into our past, our colorful past. English is just such a fascinating language. I don't claim to be a historian or an etymologist. I am just an enthusiast. So over time, I've been collecting books just like the one I showed you. And when that term that we're going to be talking about today caught my attention, I just perused YouTube and figured out it wasn't just me, that a lot of people found that fascinating. So I guess then it's worth talking about, and then you'll get my opinion on it, and hopefully I'll get to read yours in comments. Now, this word or phrase isn't even particularly old, but it just caught my attention by the randy, to be honest, imagery that it brought up. I'm envisioning some guy who likes to go alley-catting a little bit, if you know what I mean, but that's not at all what it means. But it does conjure up a world gone by and remnants of the Victorian era that literally survived up through the 1960s, some say even the 1970s. So we have more than just these lovely houses in a lot of our cities to look like. This was a practice that was still going on, not in America. This was mostly an Irish and English practice, but it was still going on in the lifetimes of people that we know and love. And the fact is, it answered a question I didn't even really know that I needed the answer to. In the past, how did people know when to wake up? It was pretty obvious, at least to me, if you were going way, way back, when people really lived off the land. And households were mini factories of their own that traded with others for the things that they could not produce themselves. That it was just the earth, the acts of nature that guided their lives. They lived by candlelight. There was no electricity. You know, they woke up with the sun. They retired to the household, you know, with sundown. And that could get into a whole other cross-cultural study into the evidence that humans are more naturally biphasic sleepers, with you go to bed for your first sleep right after dinner, and then you have like this intermission period about 11 till 2 in the morning where you do your hobbies by candlelight or whatever it is you want to do. Maybe a bit of that ooh la la that I thought was going on with this term. And then you went back for your second sleep. Now, I'm a napper. I kind of love that. I really do kind of love that. And I've lived that kind of lifestyle sometimes before when I'm doing, it depends on what type of job that I have. If I'm doing 1099 contract work and have more free time on my hands or can control my schedule a lot more. But what happened with the Industrial Revolution is that nature no longer ruled. The factory ruled, the machines ruled, the gathering in one place at precise times ruled. How did they know how to do that before the advent of reliable alarm clocks, particularly before the advent of widespread electricity? Because it is believed that there were semi-reliable wind-up alarm clocks, and you had watches, certainly, in by 1787. Now, you had watches before then, but those little bedside table type little things we're thinking about, but they were not particularly reliable, and they were not accessible to the working class people that we are talking about. We are not talking about the wealthy. We are talking about the people that worked in the factories, that worked on the docks, that worked in the shipyards, that worked in the mines. So here is where the knocker-uppers came in. They were basically human alarm clocks. They would, prowl's probably not the word, but they would go through the streets in the dead of night, 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes even 2, and wake people up by knocking on their bedroom windows, which were very often on second floors. Because just envision England, for instance, of that time. And they'd have these long poles that were made of bamboo or some other kind of cane, and tick, 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 tick on the window to wake them up. Sometimes there's these little like metal appendages on the end, and I'm just envisioning, if you saw that movie, The Fog, where against the windows, but that's what they would use to wake people up. Some were known to use pea shooters. So they have a little bag of dried peas and be like, and that almost is still used today in second bedroom windows when there's a interested young man that's trying to wake up a young lady in her bedroom. So I think in that way we can relate. Now, from what I understand, in the beginning, they used to just knock on front doors, but that was loud. And it annoyed neighbors. Remember, people generally lived very close together in like row house style. But not only did it annoy the neighbors who didn't need to get up, what if there was a neighbor that did need to get up? They were getting your service for free. They were freeloaders. So going and tapping on the window, and particularly if there were infants in the house, you could wake up, that would just start bawling. So that then became the practice. But there were also people who did not have consistent hours. So there were like knocker-upper boards or knock-up boards that were put on front doors or were put on windows, particularly for the types of jobs that changed with shifting tides, such as ship makers and in some mining jobs, that in which the time changed. And I'm sure you had to pay more if your time was not consistent. And I'm sure you also had to pay more because, from what I understand, there was different types of knocker-uppers. There were some that was quantity. Tick, 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 tick. Move on to the next one. Then there were ones that be, you do your knocking and you would wait to get an acknowledgement that the sleeper awakeneth. And I can imagine that would cost more because you could not do as many. There was a woman who was supporting a family who was doing 80 knocks a night. And there's this interesting song of the time. I'm not going to play it. You can find it on other channels. Basically, who is the knocker-upper for the knocker-uppers? And what happens if the knocker-upper doesn't knock up the knocker-upper, then you don't get knocked up. And it's turtles all the way down, baby. A retired knocker-upper was once asked, well, what do you do now? And he's like, stay in bed till 6 a.m. That must have seemed like such a luxury. But it does raise the question, who woke up the knocker-uppers? Were they just people who had really good internal alarm clocks and were able to check a watch or had some other way? This is just raising all kinds of other questions for me, but it also is just invoking. I know we look at the past with rose-colored glasses, and these were brutal lives. The people that they were waking up and the people who did this for a living, these were not the easy lives that we have today, but we can look back at them with a little bit of nostalgia and some picturesqueness, if that is a word. And it did provide an opportunity for people who might not otherwise have been able to provide for themselves. Pregnant women, some women who took children in tow in the middle of the night, people who had certain disabilities, some of the elderly. So this was an important part of the economy, and they also served another important function, and that is, since they were out and about at night, they sometimes saw some interesting things happening, and the police would rely upon them to say, well, I saw so-and-so creeping around so-and-so's house at the time such and such was stolen. But unfortunately, some of them also weren't so honest and took those same opportunities in the dark of night to do some things that weren't particularly legal. They also performed other services like putting out the gas lamps. They were up already. Why not? And some ambitious or very industrious beat police cops that walked around, they also did some side work as knocker-uppers. I mean, they were already patrolling. They were already walking around. Why not wake up a few people and make a little bit more pin money, which is another term that I've used my whole life, and I just found out that that's pretty outdated. So we might be doing a show on that as well, because it also does conjure up images, some of them not so pleasant, of a time gone by. So this is yet another job that was killed by innovation, but that innovation did create other jobs. Change is inevitable. You know, we could have just outlawed alarm clocks and we would still have knocker-uppers today. You can't stop progress no matter how much you may wish to. And I am going to leave you with some very interesting pictures of some knocker-uppers. In one of them, you can see they were waiting for the person to acknowledge, and another, you'll see a pea shooter, and another, just the long bamboo pole. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you will consider subscribing. Again, about one a week. This is just fun for me. And if you have any suggestions or any comments or any more information you want to give me on this topic, love to see it down in the comments. You have an awesome day.